Is it a good idea to take a rooftop tinny on your lap? Look, most of this video is going to be about all the reasons you shouldn't take a boat. Look, the only real positive to taking a boat in my eyes, and it's a pretty obvious one, is to be able to go fishing, exploring, and getting to those places that you may not have got to before. So they are some big positives, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot to consider into taking a boat and making sure that the negatives are definitely outweighed by those positives we just spoke about. So let's get straight into it. A big one that's on everyone's mind at the moment is weights. Weights are going to play a major role into whether you can actually physically take the boat or not. So a lot of factors come into this, depending on what vehicle you have, what caravan you're towing, what kind of boat you want. It really is a minefield with trying to calculate the weights and guesstimate half the time, because unless you've done it, it is really hard to know exactly how much everything is going to weigh. At the end of this video, there will be a link to a full-on budget rooftop tinny guide that we already have done a video on, and it really does break it down into how we did it, how we put the roof rack on the ute, the boat loader, how much it all weighed, how much it cost us, and exactly how we got it to all work together. You can estimate around 300 kilos, depending on the boat and motor package. It's going to be somewhere around there. You're looking at roughly 200, 240 kilos for boat, trailer, motor, fuel tank and whatnot. Then you've also got your anchor, your safety gear. Look, life jackets don't weigh much, but there's quite a lot of space taken up by those. So it really does start to add up, and the real factor here is where that weight is stored. About 100 kilos of it will be on the roof of your car. So you're looking at 60 to 80 kilos for a hull, plus the weight of the roof rack itself. Look, most cars can handle 100 kilos on the roof, some can't. The fact that it is on the roof makes it so much worse. The car moves around a bit more, so the driving is a bit tiring. And then not only that, if it's on a dual cab ute, it is over the rear axle and hanging over the rear bar somewhat. So your rear axle load becomes a real problem. And to be honest, I've never weighed my rear axle load, but I would hazard a guess that the boat would really push it near to the limit, especially if you're towing a big caravan with 350 kilos of bore weight. So that's something to really think about too, guys. You might think you're going to be within your GVM and your GCM and whatnot, but actually have a look at your rear axle load. If they really want to get down to the nitty gritty, you're probably still over that, because you don't put the boat on your bonnet. You probably got miles front axle load left, because as you put more on the rear, the front comes up, but that's not how the law works, I'm afraid, and your rear axle load will probably be pretty extreme. So look, weights are a big thing. I'm not saying you can't do this. Don't forget, there are ways to do it properly, but you got to really consider these things properly, and there's a lot to think about. So the weight of your van is really going to impact also on whether you can take a boat. A big reason for us going from a dual axle 3.5 ton caravan was to give us a bit more payload in our GCM. I can load the ute up a bit more because we don't have the bore weight we used to have before, which goes with what I was saying with rear axle load. So you really need to consider, are you willing to sacrifice and have a smaller, lighter caravan to take a boat? And that all comes down to weights and what your car is physically able to tow. So the next thing you really need to factor in after weights, I think weights is probably your first one. The next thing would be the cost, and whether you want to put that extra strain on the cost of your trip by having to first go out and purchase a boat. But not only that, a lot of people will change their tow vehicle to do it, and a lot of people will have to. If you don't have a GVM or GCM upgraded dual cab ute, you want to take a boat and any dual axle caravan, I reckon you're going to be bloody close or very lucky to keep it underweight, especially if you've got a couple of kids, all the luggage that goes with it, the fishing gear, and then you might want to take push bikes as well. You really are limited to taking one thing, I think, and that be if you take a boat, you can't take push bikes. 4 push bikes and a push bike rack is about 100 kilos, and generally speaking, that is on the drawbar of the caravan or on the back of the ute as well. So it's all in that one place. Every time you add weight, it's nearly added to the ball weight, or it's in the back of the ute. So this all goes along with, do you then need to purchase a different vehicle? Not only the boat, the fold-up trailer, the boat loader, the motor, and yes, there are some bargains to be had, but it's not a bargain if you've got to change the vehicle because you do not have the payload to do it. Okay, you might have the vehicle that's capable, then do you need to go and pay for engineering and get it upgraded, GVM, GCM and whatnot, which is all fine, which is all doable, and people do have the money out there for it. But getting on to the next topic, so you've gone and weighed everything and you've realised that you need to upgrade a vehicle or you need to do a GVM, GCM upgrade, so then you've gone and spent the money, so you've decided that it is worth the extra effort and it is worth the money. The next thing you got to think about is, right, I've got a boat, I've got the vehicle to do it. What kind of trip are we really going to do? Realistically, how often are we going to be able to use this thing? And is it practical to lug it all the way around the country to use it, you know, maybe a week out of 4 months? For us, I can talk from experience. We've done 2 extended trips, one 3 month, one 4.5. And the distance that we covered, there's no way we would have used that boat enough. I need to be honest, there were times I was just crying to have a boat. It would have been fantastic. But realistically, if I had to sit around and wait for the weather to be good enough to take the boat out, we wouldn't have made that time frame. So you can plan to be in a spot for a whole week, and that's where you're going to use that boat for that week out of the, you know, that month, which, you know, if you could use it a week out of every month, it probably would be worth it. But for that week you're there, you might get one day where the weather's good enough, especially on the west coast of Australia.
This morning and the winds eased a little bit, but it's still definitely breezy this morning. But we're hooking on and we're off to South Lefroy today.
Or anywhere on the coast really, wind plays a big part, and these rooftopper boats are not designed to take on rough seas or even rough lakes. If you haven't seen the latest episode of Kenilworth and Moogara Dam. See how much water we took on our little adventure this morning across the lake, and the water got a bit wild because the wind blew up. Quite a bit of water in the little boat. It doesn't take much because, yeah, 15 horsepower is not a lot to push 4 people along. Whoa. Whoops. So all that come over the back of the boat here.
Oh, tinny life, hey? Tinny life.
Yeah, you know, maybe you should stick to the other tinny life.
Yeah.
It'd be a bit safer. It doesn't take much for those little boats to be pretty well useless as soon as that wind gets up and you got a bit of chop and you got 4 people in the boat. And don't forget, those 4 people are usually 2 of your youngest kids, and you know, like, if it's just you and your mate and weather gets a bit wild and the worst happens and you fall out of the boat, chances are 99% of the time you're going to have life jackets on, you're not going to be doing anything stupid, you'll be sweet. It's a bit different when your kids are in it. So you've got to really factor in the fact that not only do you need to travel to somewhere where you can use your boat, the weather needs to be good enough at the same time, and it's a real consideration that, look, I think we made the right decision by not taking one on that 4.5 month trip, and we camped in so many places on the west coast that you could throw a stone in the water, but the wind would not have allowed us to use it enough to warrant having it on the roof for the whole 4.5 months we were away. Another consideration that may not get spoken about too much, and it really may seem like a non-topic, is the fact that being a rooftop boat, and if you are using it in salt water, and 90% of the time you'll be on the coast using a boat, when you do load that boat back up, you need to wash it down, you need to hose it down. Don't forget it's been in salt water, so as you load it up over the roof of your car, it drops salt water all over your car. Being able to hose the salt and sand off it, and we'll just let it hang there for a minute while we have a swim, dry off, winch it up. It just limits how much salt and sand's going on your car. Yeah, so bloody handy and a successful weekend all in all. So you do need that bit of extra water on hand, I think, to wash the boat down a bit to get it up onto the roof. Look, that may not be a big factor for everyone. Personally, I don't get too hung up about that, but it is a consideration nonetheless. And it's just another thing of taking a boat. There's a lot of bits and pieces that go with it. So I touched on this in the first topic. Having a boat on the roof of your car will make driving that little bit more tiresome that you just don't realise. Once we put the boat on the Cruiser, and the Cruiser is probably a really good example, a solid axle front end car, lots of weight over the back, they just start to wander around on the road a bit. Having that weight up high and back further, it really does make doing bigger days in the car that little bit more difficult and a little bit more tiresome. Oh my God, it's good to be here. from driving down through the Bruce Highway in through the city to these undulating country open roads. It's a very tiring drive. The cruiser with the boat on the roof and questionable wheel alignment at the moment is freaking hard work. So it's time for a beer. So really, that is a consideration, because if you're going to do a lap around Australia, if you're going to do any sort of trip where it requires you to do quite a fair bit of driving, I'm talking about, you know, we did 20,000 Ks in 4.5 months, so it is a fair bit. Having that boat on the roof would make those days in the car that bit more tiring, and you'd really start to hate it if you weren't using it. Righto, the last topic, and look, not everyone's going to be like this, that really want you to think to yourselves, right, all those things we've just spoken about, you can live with all of those, you're a hardcore fisherman, you're going to get the boat anyway, awesome. Like, I'm not saying don't get a boat, I'm just getting you guys to make sure that when you make the decision to take it, you've considered all these things, and you know what you're in for, and you want the boat anyway, that's great. Don't be one of those keeping up with the Joneses people. Don't take a boat because everyone else has got one. It goes with the whole scene at the moment. Facebook, Instagram, all those things have got a lot to answer for with having the flashless four drive, and you know, there's not many dual axle caravans these days that don't start over 100 grand. Look, I know we've got a 79 series cruiser, it's a $100,000 ute, and I'm not ashamed to say that. Anyone can go and see how much all these things are worth. Look, and we're happy with it, and we use it, and we haven't overstretched ourselves, but there's going to be people out there that get really, really upset with not being able to keep up with everyone else and what everyone else is doing. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Do what makes you happy. Don't get the boat, and I'm talking about the boat in this instance. Don't get the boat because you think you should have a boat to do a lap. If you don't fish at home and you don't have a boat at home, don't all of a sudden think you're going to need one to do a lap around Australia. There's more to doing a lap around Australia and camping on the coast than having a boat. So after all that, if you still want to go out and buy a rooftop tinny, check this video out now. Full guide on a budget, exactly how we did it. Don't forget, guys, you only live once. Get out there and enjoy it. Go and get a boat if you want.